So let's talk about the self hate. So let's talk about the self hate going on in America. There is a lot of self hate going on in American ethnicities, many of them. For instance, a lot of black folks don't want to be considered African American. They just want to be considered black or black American. And just like disregard the fact that you're still a whole African. And yes, we know our cultures as an African American and as pure Africans are different, but the ethnicity, the ethnic makeup is still the same. I mean, aside from the fact that you probably have 30, it's like, I don't know if it comes from the fact that growing up they told us our ancestors came from Africa and that we weren't African, but our ancestors was. And then you have a whole culture shock because when you take your DNA test, you find out you're actually 60 to 70% African, your darn self, so you're still African. And you realize, oh, we didn't just come from, or our ancestors didn't just come from Africa. You actually are Africa. There's a lot of self hate within the black community. Not just talking light skin versus dark skin self hate. I'm talking about blacks not wanting to actually be called African Americans, because they say they're not. If your DNA says you're 60 to 70% African, you're still a whole African. Your culture is just different because you're an African American. And then we move on to the Mexican community or Latino community. I'm talking Mexicans, Ricans, and Cubans, because a lot of Mexicans fail to realize they're actually still white and Europeans, and they have to take a whole DNA test and be like having a whole heart attack and like culturally shocked to find out that they're actually still 80% white, or aka European, or whatever you want to slice it, however you want to slice it. And I'm like, you guys, at this point, the self hate for some Hispanics or Mexicans and Ricans and non-black. So I'm not talking black Puerto Ricans and black Cubans. I'm talking J-Lo Puerto Rican white Cubans. And I'm gonna leave Dominicans out because they tend to be more mixed and or black. But these other ones are either white Puerto Rican or they're black Puerto Rican. You're either a white Cuban or you're a black Cuban. Mexicans are just Mexicans unless one of their parents is black and the other is Hispanic. But these groups, they often go off, oh, I'm Puerto Rican, or oh, I'm Mexican. And I don't know how many DNA tests I've watched of everyone, especially blacks and Latinos, and just to see how shocked Latinos are when they find out they're actually white. Like Adrienne Bilar, she was like, Adrienne Bilar, I don't know if I said that right, but she was like, am I actually as white as Tia? And Tia was like, yes. It's like y'all are mostly 80% European, but you live under this illusion that, oh, I'm just Mexican, I'm just Puerto Rican, not realizing that you're still came from Spain, so that makes them European Spaniards. Literally, white people that speak Spanish, they're still Europeans, and it's just a shock. And I mean, I don't know how many I've seen, and I've seen this other one, and this Mexican took his DNA results, and it said 80% European, and he was like shocked. He was like, wait, because this whole time he thought he was different from a white guy, and I'm like, how different can you be? Look at your skin and your hair. You're not brown. You're not the same complexion as me. Maybe some of them in Mexico are, and he just had this nasty attitude about it when he realized he was 80% European. He was just like, I'm Mexican. And I'm like, dude, embrace your whiteness. Like, Mexicans and Ricans and Cubans need to embrace their whiteness. Y'all need to love your white brothers and sisters, and like everybody just needs to get along and love each other. Black, stop denying your Africanness for those that do, unless you're Afrocentric like myself, or you accept the fact that you're African American or African. And I think the ignorance is in the language, because Latinos look at white people and be like, I'm not white because they don't speak Spanish, they speak English. Well, there are different types of Europeans, just like there are different types of Africans. You have West Africans, you have East Africans, you have Nigerians, you have Ethiopians, just like you have the Irish, the Scottish. They all speak a different language. You have the Italians, they speak Italian, they don't speak Spanish, but they're all still Europeans. And could embrace their whiteness. You use the same shampoo as white people. You're the same complexion. You both tan. You're not actually brown. You're the same complexion as white people. Embrace your whiteness. Learn how to love each other. You speak different languages because it's different types of white people. New York is divided, and Boston is divided by the different type of whites. You got the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh. I mean, it's so many. The Spaniards, but they're all still white. The Mexicans, but they're all still white. It's like George Lopez said on his show, he was like the African Americans, aka Africans, the Mexicans are still aka Europeans. He realized it. Some people know, and then others can't. And I just wish that I feel like we're at our best when we actually know who we are ethnically and don't just live on the illusion of our race as far as a Mexican. Your ethnicity is still European. Your race may be Mexican or Rican or Cuban, but your ethnicity is still European. But my ethnicity is still African. And like I said, the cultures are different because we grew up in America, right? And then we get to learn about our African culture because it was taken away from us versus growing up in Nigeria or in any other African country, Cameroon or Mali. And then I want to move on to the white folks, the Europeans. And now there's this big thing about calling whites Europeans. And I'm like, why? That's what they are. They came from Europe. You're Europeans. And if you say you're white and don't want to be called European, you're delusional because whether you're Scottish, you're from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, that's all still very much Europe. So you are European. And I don't think that you should always, for you Caucasian people out there that do, or Europeans out there, or aka white folks that do, be like, oh, well, I'm part Native American. Knowing good as well, you're just white. Like, it's okay to just be white. It's not. Ancestors drug my ancestors over here some 300, 400 years ago and then beat many of them and killed many of them. It's not your fault that your great 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 grandpappy did that to my great great grandpappy. It's okay for you to just be white. I'm not going to blame you for what your ancestors did, white folks out there. So you don't, for those of you that do, you don't have to keep lying and saying you're part Native American when you're not, for those that are not. Because I see so many white people be like, oh, I'm part Native American, so no one's going to blame you for what your ancestors did to my ancestors. I'm looking at you as a person, and you don't have to say that you're part Native American to feel like if you don't say that, people are going to be mad at you. If they are, that's ignorant because it wasn't you, it was your ancestors. So I just need those of you out there that are white and that are not part Native American to stop saying you are. You don't have to be honest with yourself and others and accept the fact that you're European, and it's okay for you to just be white, aka European. You don't have to be part Native American, part black, part anything. And so many of you are not part of anything. You're just that, European, and you don't want to say that because you want to feel like you don't want to be taking part of the white man's plight of killing the natives and killing blacks and the evil ancestors, so you have to make up a story. You don't have to. Just be who you are. I just feel like it's so much self-hate, and I thought it was just in the black. It's in the Latino community. They want to say, oh, well, we're actually Native American. The truth is most of you are actually 80% or more European, and you're only a quarter Native American or 30%. That's the truth of the matter. So at the end of the day, you're still white. So love your white brothers and sisters, Latinos out there that are non-black. And then white folks, you don't have to be part of anything to feel like you can take part in it because you can't relate to us. You can't. You're white. You're the superior race. It is what it is. So for those Europeans out there, Caucasians, white folks that like to pretend that they're part Native or part this or part black, you don't have to be anything other than what you are, which is white. Obviously, if you were part anything, it's still going to show up somewhere. There are those rare cases where you come out looking all the way white, even though your parent was half this or something. But most of the time, you are what you are, but y'all want to, take on somebody else's identity to be able to relate to minorities. Don't do that. Just be yourself. I'm going to wrap up the conversation with this. When I was in high school at Arts Magnet, there was this Asian young lady, and I want to say she was Chinese. And I remember asking her, what's your ethnicity? And I think she said Chinese. And she was like, oh, but I'm only half. And I was like, it's okay, girl. Love who you are. I was like, nothing is wrong if you're 100%. Like, be who you are. Like, I've always been like, whatever your ethnicity is, rep that. Like, be who you are. That's my problem. Rep that, and then understand that if you're, because we were at a school and I guess it was mixed, it was white, black, it had some other minorities that we could see, but predominantly white and black. I guess she felt like she wanted to be more accepted by white girls, so she was like, "I'm only half Asian though, or Japanese, half, I think half Chinese." And I was like, "Girl, be like, love your Asian. If you was 100%, that's rock that." And so I think we all need to love who we are and stop trying to like minimize who we are, and understand that if you are Latino, Rican, Mexican, or Cuban, you are still very much European, which is white. And I know a lot of you had to take that as a surprise when you found out from the DNA test, but you have to understand your ethnic makeup so you won't walk around in ignorance and be surprised when you find out that your DNA test still says you're white or European. And it's okay, because at the end of the day, you're not brown. You're white. You're the same complexion as white people, and you're white and beautiful. So Latinos, be white and beautiful, non-black ones. And whites, be white and beautiful, and blacks, be African and beautiful. And again, when I was talking to those Latino groups, I'm talking about the non-black ones, the ones that don't have a black parent, that are not mixed with black. Okay, they're either a white Latino or a black Latino. That's just the gist of it. So if you're a white Latino, embrace your European. That's all I'm saying. If you're African American, embrace your African. If you're white, baby, be white. You don't have to be part of nothing. Y'all ain't got to lie out there. Be who you are and embrace. The self-hate has to stop. It's time for us to love not just our culture, but our ethnic makeup and the countries that we come from and that our ancestors come from, because that's still who you are. Without them, white folks, Latinos,